Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Serious topic today, so let's go for it. Serious. What's an event in your life that still F's you up to this day? Please remember to like, share, grab a tissue, and subscribe. There was a girl next door to my grandparents' house that I had the biggest crush on. Her name was Becca. We had known each other from the time I was really little. We were both coming into the ages of liking the opposite sex at the same time, and we had similar troubled childhoods. Becca lived with her grandparents too. Somewhere after holding hands, but before a first kiss, Becca gave me a ring. She borrowed it from her grandpa and needed it back the next day. I was on cloud 9. With excitement, I showed my mom the ring. She asked my grandparents to borrow their truck and told me to get in and make sure I brought the ring. I had no idea what was going on. We pulled up to the jewelry store at Eureka and Telegraph, and she asked to see the ring. She went inside, no kids were allowed, and came out about 20 minutes later. Then we went to McDonald's. The first time I'd eaten anything but food pantry food in at least a year. She said the jewelry store needed to borrow that specific ring for a few weeks to clean it up. I asked what I was supposed to tell Becca had happened to it, and she said to tell her that I had lost it. I never saw that ring again, and Becca never talked to me again. My father was in hospice dying from cancer. He had stopped eating and was barely communicative. We knew it was just a matter of days. Mom and I went to visit him every day for a few hours so he wouldn't be alone. One morning we get a call. Fearing the worst, I answered it, expecting them to let us know he had passed. My father was on the phone, and he sounded well. He even said he was hungry and asked for breakfast. He told me he was looking forward to our visit. I was stunned. Had all these emotions and thoughts. Maybe it was a miracle and he was going to beat this. Hopped in the car and started driving over. Got another phone call. This time it was the hospice folks. He had just passed. The roller coaster of emotions from that morning haunt me. I was numb for a long time. There was a period where I thought maybe I hallucinated and never spoke with my dad that morning. To put my mind at ease, I met with the hospice nurse who was with my dad that morning. She explained this concept called terminal lucidity. She says it's not uncommon at all and is usually a sign that someone will pass soon. That helped, but it still haunts me. I lost a friend to suicide in autumn 2017. He was the first person I loved, and he was also the first and only person to properly break my heart, which happened some years before he died. His mental health was always chaotic, and in the months before his death, I distanced myself because I was finding it overwhelming. Something I regret now, but also understand I needed to do. I never wanted to not be his friend. I always saw a future with us in a place where we'd be old friends who could joke about him breaking my heart when I was 20. Our friendship never recovered to what it was without the messy love thing, but it was getting there. Since his death, I've realized how much he influenced me to be the person I am today. I really miss him. I understand and accept his death. However, even now, this life without him feels off balance, like something went wrong with the universe. I had so much faith in him getting better. It was a normal Friday. I had taken an early day to help my father with haylage. Earlier that morning, my father brought my mother to the hospital because she was dry heaving a lot. When I got home, the phone rang and I picked it up. They said it was the hospital and that they were going to transfer her to a bigger hospital because she had just had a heart attack. So I tell my father, and he goes to the bigger hospital to fill out forms and stuff. 3 hours later, I get a call saying that they're going to airlift her to the city with the best cardiac doctors, so I start to pack bags for everyone. Then my father calls me one more time to tell me to go get my brother from his pre-prom party because mom's not going to make it. So I'm driving like a bat out of hell trying to find my brother's party. The speed all the way to the hospital praying that the cops have a huge drug bust or something. I get to the hospital with my brother, and we see our father outside the room crying. My father is an emotional man when it comes to death. I've never seen him cry so much. I look to my right, and there's 7 people in my mother's room. Doctors, nurses, the helicopter crew that was going to transfer her. It was about 45 minutes, it felt like, and they said there was nothing else they could do. My mother died that day without a warning. There are a few tearjerkers in this post today, and this one might have been the biggest one for me, so. My mom was hit and killed by a driver on her morning walk. My dad stood right next to her and was almost hit himself. It happened in a public park in an unmarked crosswalk. The guy never got out of his truck to help as my mom bled out. My dad watched the whole thing. They were married for 45 years. I can't even get the call from my dad out of my head. He called me while on scene to tell me mom was dead. The guy that hit her never received even a ticket. He got off scot-free because the DA ruled it an accident. Even witnesses at the scene said he failed to yield. My mom was killed within 2 steps of the curb, literally 1 second later, and she'd have been okay. The dude hit her in the shoulder. Even the police stated this. He broke laws and faced no consequence. My dad is a shell of himself. When I was 16, I was on my way to take my SAT on a Saturday morning. I pulled up to a 4-way stop on a quiet street and looked both directions, glanced to my right, and saw a car way down the road. Didn't look for her more than a second and thought I was good, since he had to stop at his stop sign. I enter the intersection and look to my right again, and the car is already at the intersection. He was going 55 miles per hour on a 25 mile per hour road. He was not stopping. Time slowed down as I realized, oh, he's about to T-bone the side of my tiny pickup truck. So I look away from the window to keep my face safe from any potential flying shards of glass. I white-knuckle grip the wheel and just hope for the best. He flipped my truck. I rolled onto my side and nailed a telephone pole with the top of my truck. As I'm laying there on my side, I'm feeling all over my body, just expecting to be badly hurt and just in shock. But amazingly, my worst injury is a scraped elbow. This was nearly 10 years ago. And even today, I drive like a grandma when it comes to intersections. I'll wait an extra few seconds every time if I feel like a car is approaching too quickly. There have been times where a car is coming up quickly and my heart rate will skyrocket because I think I'm about to get hit again. I've never trusted another driver ever since that day, and being that defensive has never steered me wrong. On the bright side, the guy who hit me immediately called the police, then shoved his shirt through a crack in my door so I could cover myself while the cop broke the window and pulled me out. He broke several bones, admitted fault to the police the second they got there, and personally apologized to my hysterical mother and myself multiple times. As shitty as I was that he hit me, at least he wasn't a shitty person. I still took my SAT too. My hand was shaking from adrenaline the entire time. My dad stroked 3 years ago. He has aphasia as a result. Basically, his speech is 95% effed up. He says apple when he means garbage, basement when he means garden. He's only called me my mom's name since the stroke. In his head, though, the comprehension and knowledge are all there. He sounds like he's saying the right words, but only to himself. It's very frustrating. Same thing with writing. He'll write all the wrong letters, but it will look right only to him. He's still here, which is amazing, but he's completely changed now that he can almost never be understood verbally. Life has completely changed overnight for him and living with him. Now he doesn't talk much. He's really depressed, but what therapy can you get for someone who is nonverbal? We used to have deep conversations. Now it sometimes takes 30 plus minutes to understand a single thought of his. The effed up part is he's still aware of all the right words, etc. in his head. It's just stuck there. No way to get out. The frustration that something like this happening to a family member is palpable. I have a friend who was afflicted by a stroke and suffered not to that level with speech, and you could see the frustration. I'm sorry, and it's rough. My best friend lied about having cancer and that he was dying, basically lying on his deathbed hospitalized for almost 2 weeks. He took it so far that he faked phone calls from his doctors and nurses. 2 of the worst and longest weeks of my life, having to mentally prepare myself to lose the one person who meant the world to me, and just a few months after I lost my childhood friend. I just feel so incredibly stupid I fell for it, and haven't really been able to process it even though it was 2 years ago. I just can't get over it. F you, Julian. When I was a child, I received an invitation to a birthday party. It was handwritten and given to me by the kid whose birthday it was. When I got there, he pretended not to remember inviting me and asked to see the invitation. He denied writing it in front of many of my classmates and said I invited myself. I was so upset that I wanted to leave immediately, but my mom had already left. So I explained what happened to his mom so she could maybe drop me off. Luckily, his mom recognized his handwriting and was clearly angry at her son for being a bully, so she gave some lamingtons and a soda and told me I could go play video games by myself until my mom picked me up. That was the day I discovered that none of my classmates were my friends. My little brother passed away last year at 18 as a victim of a DUI car accident. Got hit when he was walking on the sidewalk late at night with his friends when he was away studying at the other side of the world. We are from EU, but he was staying in the US. Dead on impact, basically. Immediately flew out to the US once we heard the news, and they managed to keep his heart running for several organ donations. But to see his alive yet lifeless corpse still runs through my head on a daily basis. I have found inner peace, but life will never be the same. It definitely teaches one to not take everything for granted, because life can hit as hard as a train. Asking my parents to take me to the hospital and being dismissed by them. A few years ago, I ended falling suddenly and aggressively ill with what I now know as sepsis. I thought I just had a cold, but it wasn't going away. I was more afraid with each passing day and decided to go to urgent care. The labs the techs took from me alarmed them significantly, and they urged me to go to the hospital. So whatever I had was pretty severe. I was terrified, exhausted, and nearly delirious, but couldn't drive myself to the hospital. I asked my parents to take me and they immediately became dismissive. I was blowing things out of proportion, and they decided I should wait until the next day to see my doctor. My dad told me I could drive myself to the hospital, but he wouldn't support me doing it. I spent that night crying and just staring at the ceiling. I knew I was dying, but my parents chose to dismiss my fears and concerns. I prayed to God to let me live through the night and asked why my parents could do something like this and still sleep at night like nothing was wrong. I wanted the pain to end, and I had to beg them to take me to the doctor the next day. At the appointment, the nurse yelled at my mom for ignoring what urgent care said the day before and for waiting to take me somewhere to be seen. I will forever be thankful to that nurse. The doctor made his diagnosis and basically said I was 1 to 2 days away from death and I needed to be hospitalized ASAP. That kicked off a nearly 1-month hospital stay that required me to get open heart surgery because the damage had been done. While in the hospital, I asked them why they didn't believe me, why they neglected serious health issues time and time again. This wasn't the first time they dismissed something serious, whether it be weight or broken bones. They didn't have an answer for me. I guess me nearly dying in the hospital finally made them realize their mistakes. I know they're traumatized from the ordeal and have tried making it up to me. Sometimes I'm okay, and I can talk to them like nothing's changed, but I will never trust them again, and I don't think I can forgive them. Sometimes the disdain and hatred I had for them while they let me suffer comes up, and I can't stand to even look at them. I've since moved out, and they noticed I don't come by to see them very frequently. I have PTSD from that night wondering if I would die while they waited to take me to the hospital, and on those days I can't see them. I hope I can recover from that day one day. Besides selfishness or neglect, I don't understand how a parent could ignore the pleas of their child or medical professionals to take their child to a hospital. Sorry, I'm glad you made it, and I could understand why you feel the way you do. I was raised Mormon, and hands down my 2-year Mormon mission. As a kid, you sing songs like I Hope They Call Me on a Mission. You're told it is the best 2 years of your life. You hear amazing stories from your father, uncles, grandparents, cousins, teachers at church about the fun they had, about the miracles they saw. And so you get ready to go. You buy the suits and shirts and ties and slacks and shoes. You see the total bill make your parents' eyes water. You see they can barely afford to keep you and your 8 siblings fed, so $2,000 for cheap suits, 10 shirts, and nice shoes is a massive sacrifice. But it's all for God, so you know it's right. You get to the Missionary Training Center, MTC, and are surrounded by thousands of others just like you with a shared dream, with similar family stories. You're taught to be perfect. You're taught that if you are not perfect, it is your fault when you don't baptize the people in your assigned area of service, and so you forget yourself and go to work, yielding your personal needs to the whims and instructions of the church, of your mission leaders. You get to your assigned area. I was in Central America and quickly realized that it's much harder than you were told. It is not safe, but your companion helps you learn how to identify gang members and keeps clear of them. You thank God you're in a religious country where people may disagree with you, but ultimately don't bother you because you are a Christian missionary. One day, when you are teaching a lesson about God, you hear multiple gunshots from out front of the 3 houses down, followed by a speeding car. The lesson is over. Everyone needs to know who just died, but everyone is too afraid to go outside just yet. You learn that the people killed in the drive-by were mistaken for the intended target. 2 innocent people died because they were sitting on the wrong stoop. You quickly learn to identify that if the bang you just hard was a gunshot or a firework. Lessons of perfection are constant. You believe you are a failure because you aren't seeing the success others are. You don't realize until years later that this is a sales job, not a service opportunity. You have enough money to feed yourself, but often go hungry because the required schedules doesn't allow for dinner until 9:30 to 10 p.m., and you're walking 8 to 15 miles a day. Your companions hate you. You want to be a good missionary and be obedient and work until you can't anymore. They have boundaries, but you don't. You were trained out of them. They hate your effing guts. You feel so alone. The mission president is not kind or loving. He never talks to you unless required. He only calls when you email him to say your companion threatened to beat you up. You feel so alone. You are alone, chained to someone who hates you. Every new assigned companion you hope for, someone good to work with. Every new assignment, your heart sinks. It's another problem missionary you're babysitting again. You feel so alone. You cannot call your parents except at Christmas and Mother's Day. You can send them 1 email a week. You're told to never share negative stories lest your parents worry for you. You don't tell your parents about almost being mugged by a drunk gang member. Thank God for those kids who pointed you down the alley to get away quickly. You worry about how your parents can afford to pay for you to be there. $400 a month is a lot of money when there are so many mouths at home to feed. You're grateful for the financial help others in your community are offering to pay your way. Years later, you learn that your mission president has all his expenses paid for, including a penthouse in the right part of the city, food, flights for kids to visit, gifts for kids and grandkids, and more. A bat gets into your bedroom through the 4-inch gap between the wall and the sheet metal roof. Tarantulas and scorpions make regular appearances in your home when it rains. You serve your 2 years and go home. After 2 years in Central America eating beans and rice, you go to Costco and have a nervous breakdown at the excess of America. You spend $1,100 on a new computer so you can go to college. You feel immense guilt for taking care of yourself. It's been 10 years since I got home and I've spent countless hours in therapy dealing with it. I hate the Mormon Church so much. I hate what they do to kids and how they take advantage of youth.